Welcome to the Unholier podcast. We are joined today with Anne Russo. Anne is an author and a therapist, and she is also a survivor of religious trauma. So we sit down with Anne today and talk to her about her experience within the church and within the queer community, as well as her new book. Let's welcome Anne to the show. Hey, Anne, thanks for coming on the podcast today. It's so good to have you here.
Oh, I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you. I'm really excited to get into good conversation today. I'm really excited.
Yay. Yeah, same here. So you actually were on one of our sister podcasts, The Process of Healing with David Keck, our lovely producer. And your episode was amazing. In fact, we talked about some stuff before we recorded about the speed dating therapy, which I thought was an amazing idea. And you yourself are a therapist, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. In what space exactly do you do therapy?
I have a remote practice, and it actually has about 15 therapists. And we work primarily in California. And we work mostly with folks that come from more oppressive, marginalized backgrounds, queer, religious trauma, BIPOC, sexual empowerment, relationships. We want to be that space for folks that maybe traditionally don't feel safe in therapy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's awesome. Good to know. And I understand that you've written a book or two, or maybe more.
I wish more, but I just finished my first book that's under contract with Pessy, who does a lot of work in mental health, and they are phenomenal. So I'm really excited to be published with them. And the book is on religious trauma treatment model. And it's to
great.
teach therapists how to work with people that have experienced religious trauma. And it's also for folks that are interested in learning more about religious trauma.
Oh, perfect. That goes right along with what we talk about on our podcast.
Yes. And the thing that I feel really excited about and hopeful about is that a lot of religious trauma treatment in the past has been very focused on folks always leaving faith. And this has the option to remain in faith in this particular type of model, which I feel is great, because I think it's terrible sometimes when people feel kind of stuck. Like, can I still have my beliefs and not have what does that look like? Right. Especially when you've had trauma.
I think that is such a great conversation to have. And we definitely will dive into that, because I have questions myself. Awesome. And I know a lot of people probably listening will too. So maybe just let's start out with what in your definition is religious trauma?
It's when you have been involved in some type of high control religion environment, and that can be for a while, where it starts to bleed into who you are, and you're not really clear on where you start and the religion starts. So it's basically a lot of hierarchical belief systems and following that hierarchical belief system. And then when you remain in it, or if you choose to leave, there's a lot of trigger points. So you have anxiety, depression, guilt, shame, difficult coping skills. It kind of lives within your system like any trauma would, but this is a more sustained trauma, because it's not something that happens to you one day. You're in a church environment sometimes for years and years, right?
Yeah. And that's so interesting, because I definitely experienced a lot of those things that you mentioned. Mine was, I left after my divorce. So I was married to an evangelist son. He became the youth pastor of my dad's church, and he was an abusive individual. And then when I left, it was almost like the church left me. I left him, and then the church left me. Like, people weren't reaching out to see how they could help. They weren't reaching out to offer any type of comfort or anything like that. Even just to be like, hey, I'm here if you need me. And so I felt shunned, honestly. And then it was like, I wasn't even the one that was the problem, but he remained in church, not that particular church, but he remained in the religion and is still active in one of those churches. And so I think that the people there really felt like, well, she must have been doing other things, because he's still in church and she's not, so she must be guilty of something.
Your story just resonates so much with people that I've spoken to throughout my life. And I even write about this. I have a vignette where I talk about, a client who's been through the same situation and kind of how to help that client, because it's not uncommon to feel very stuck in an abusive situation or an abusive marriage. And then you have to find that strength to leave and even go against the doctrine that you've been taught around
Right.
marriage, right? And you do that hard work just to have the people that are supposed to be your deepest support system not show up as your deepest support system, and oftentimes support the other person. It's truly a very upsetting scenario, because I hear it so much, and so many women truly are impacted by this.
Yeah. And just from talking to other survivors, I feel like the majority of people that have experienced what I've experienced as far as that, leaving a spouse and that they married within the church and then not going to church anymore, I feel like women are more shunned than men are for whatever reason. I'm not sure. I mean, at least within the independent fundamental Baptist religion. I don't know if it's like that across the board. I've talked to other people, Mormons and other people in different religions, and they've experienced the same thing as far as like a woman. But I don't know if you see that in your practice, if it's majority women experience that versus men.
100%.
Why do you think that is?
I think, unfortunately, the way that scripture is interpreted and understood, in the way that many religions are formed, and especially Christianity, it's very much formed around women being really less than, and that women are supposed to hold a dual opposite role of like the Virgin Mary idea and then like the whore Mary idea, and how do they show up and be silent. So it's like you're living in this like deeply controlled space, but you're like the evil one. So it's like women are just looked at as less than, even if churches will claim, oh, that's not true. But I mean, we can see it in the actions, and you can see it from the development of the faith, and like what the church fathers, the people who really created how we understand Christianity today, the way they speak about women is just, it blow your mind, like truly. Like even having studied faith for so long, I never went that deep into what was being said about women. And it's like, okay, well, that explains our society.
Yeah. I mean, I remember being a teenager at a youth camp and preachers getting up and telling the girls that if you are dressing inappropriately, which we weren't allowed to even wear pants. So I don't even know what they're talking about. We literally look like Amish girls. If you are dressing inappropriately according to their standards, and we were causing the boys to lust after us, then we were whores. Like we were the problem.
Exactly. You're exactly. And that is, I mean, it's just so upsetting. And even, like I think about this push of purity culture. Like,
yes.
Tell me about the boys' purity dance with their moms. You know what I mean? Like it's yeah, where's the men's purity rings? You know what I mean? Like it's everything lands on the woman.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. And then if I know that I've experienced this even in my dad's church, that there were a couple of, teenage girl friends that I had growing up that got pregnant in a high school. And you never saw the boys get up and have to apologize in front of the church. It was always the girls. And I just never understood that. I'm like, where is he? Why isn't he up there doing it? Like, or standing by her? They did this together. Like, and also, why are we having them publicly apologize to us? Like, that's not even, to me, that was like really, it was so terrible and just cringy and awful and heartbreaking. It's like, no teenager purposely gets pregnant, right? They don't purposely, they're kids, they're experimenting, they're messing around. It's what kids do. And it's like to have them make a public display. What kind of trauma does that cause? Lasting trauma. That has to be
absolutely
terrible. And I wasn't even the person that had to do it, and it traumatized me. I'm like, this is my friend.
Of
you
course.
know?
And then what does that do to the idea of a healthy sexuality for that person moving forward? So
Yeah.
it's like it just messes you up entirely. That whole abstinence, purity, it's the girl's fault. The amount of sexual dysfunction and shame that comes from that way of thinking is astronomical. For men
Yeah.
too, but especially for women.
Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. And, I always struggled too. And David and I talked about this on my own personal episode that I had with David when I told my story. But it's like your whole life in this religion. And I know it's not just the IFB, it's in multiple religions where they basically tell you abstain, abstain, abstain from sex, don't have sex, don't have sex. If you cause a boy to lust after you, you're the problem. Like you are taught like sex is bad until marriage, then you get married to somebody. And in my case, it was essentially an arranged marriage because I was told this is who God wants you to marry. Then you get to the point where you can have sex and it's terrible. Like in my own experience,
Course,
it was
of course.
not good.
Of course. And just because you're now being told that you can do this, it doesn't erase the shame and the stigma and guilt that's been placed on you for your entire life. And you're supposed to just walk into that situation and be open to this experience. That's just not
Yeah.
how human beings work. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you add on top of it, I wasn't even attracted to the guy. So I had to go through a surgery because my body was literally closed off to him. Like
Rejecting.
I could,
Rejecting.
yes. And so I had to actually go through a surgery and it had nothing to do, and I would like to say this publicly, it had nothing to do with his size, let me tell you.
Mhm.
Because I know that in my first interview, a couple people asked me, well, was it because of, and I said, absolutely not. It was because my body literally was closed off to him, did not want anything to do with it. And my gynecologist actually told me that she sees that in rape victims.
Yeah.
And so David had asked me, even though you were an adult and you were in marriage with this person, do you feel like it was a consensual? Did you feel like it was rape? And I said, yes, I actually did, because there were times where I said, I don't want to do this. And it was like, well, you're my wife. You have to. You don't have a choice. You have to submit to me. You can't deny me, what's rightfully mine as a husband. And oh, he used the word defraud. Love that. Defraud. I couldn't defraud him. I know that there are women listening who are literally living in this experience currently as we are speaking. Do you have any advice for somebody who might be living in a terrible situation like that, or who is just trying to navigate religious trauma of their own? They maybe are like, wait a minute, maybe I have some religious trauma. How can they navigate that? And maybe they're still in the church.
That is a question I wish I could just answer simply.
I know it is a loaded question.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, but it's a very, I mean, it's extremely valid question. I really think that when you're so steeped in this, it will take time and work. So finding a support system or a therapist trained in this. And I hope that my book and the information that I'm putting out there is helpful. There's other people that have done a lot of work in religious trauma. I'd say read up on it, but know that it's going to take time and it does take work. And
Yes.
your body really does tell you, like your body told you this
Yeah.
is wrong.
Yeah.
And in my personal belief is that God, an all loving, all knowing, all powerful God, is not going to send you those types of messages directly to your body if what you're being taught is okay. It's in direct misalignment with everything. It's like your body is literally telling you this is not okay. And I just can't imagine a God who would say it was.
Yeah.
you know
Same. I totally agree with you. And that was one of the ways I was able to mentally get out of the headspace I was in, because I was like, once I had my daughter and became a parent and was like, I would do anything for her. I would die for her. I would give up everything for my kids. I had a different perspective. It wasn't just me at that point. And I thought to myself, if God is our Father, right? He's our Heavenly Father. He wants more for us than we want for our own children. And I would never expect my daughter to stay in a situation that I'm currently in with that person. And so I got out. And that was sort of, she was my strength to say, like, I wouldn't want my daughter to tolerate this, so I'm not going to tolerate this. And it came to a point where it really challenged my paradigm, because I was like, if I go to hell because I'm divorcing him, so be it. I'm not going to allow myself to live in this hell on earth, and I'm not going to allow my daughter to be exposed to how her dad is treating her mother. It's not right. And if that's my sentence, and that's my sentence. Like, I just kind of came to that realization, like, nothing is going to stop me at this point. And then that's when I felt like I was brave enough to fight back and to have the courage to leave. And I just didn't care anymore what anyone thought. But I had also apparently an unrealistic expectation that the people in the church would be there for me when I did leave, because a lot of them knew about the abuse. They had seen it firsthand, and they weren't. And I was shocked by that. So for people that are listening who are afraid to leave, or afraid, maybe they're not even in an abusive marriage or an abusive situation within their home, fine. Maybe they're just considering, like, maybe there's abuse within the church with other people, or the pastor isn't doing things right, or they want to leave, but they're just not sure how to do it. And they need advice. They're like, where do I go? This is all I've ever known. How can I still be a Christian, worship God, be a believer, but maybe go to a different church or not go to church at all? What advice would you give to somebody like that who's just struggling as to, like, not knowing where they can jump off to?
So, and this is actually the third phase of the treatment model, but I think that people can start here if they're even starting to question these things. And it's really to understand what's your own belief versus an inherited belief. Like, where did that come from? Why do I believe this? What is it about God?
Mm-hmm.
If you're someone who's like, my faith is important to me, I want to remain within my faith, I would say, I have this quiz that I do, and I think people could do this. Like, what's Jesus mean to you? What does the Bible mean to you? What is like what's the church versus what's the faith? Like, start to like peel back the layers a little bit. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not about having to leave the church. It's really just to understand, like, how do I understand God? How do I understand Jesus? How do I understand the faith, the tradition? Is it aligning with the church? Like, it's just this work. Like earlier you said, I don't care if I was going to go to hell at that point, but where in the Bible does it say going to hell, or you'll go to hell for having a divorce? Like,
Mm-hmm.
where? So it's like, get in there, but that was put in your mind, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's not really scripturally sound in any way. So it's like, do the deeper work. I know that we're taught when we're in these high control faith environments not to do the work, because then you're
Mm-hmm.
questioning God. You're not questioning God.
Right.
You're questioning the people that are telling you about God. And if people need to tell you not to look at things, that's not really about God at that point. That's about their need for controlling you.
Yeah. And that's when I really tell people, you're probably in a cult, because if they're telling you to not question and not research and not do your own studying, like, you might be in a cult of sorts.
Yes, it's understandable to be afraid, to feel guilt, to feel shame, to feel like, where do I go from? I mean, all of that is a completely understandable feeling. And also, God created you, you are strong, you have a brain, you have a soul. Do this for yourself, do this for your relationship with God, and do this for the people that you love and care about, like you were able to do for yourself and for your daughter or your child. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, like, it's astounding to me that you just up and was like, I got this. Like, I don't hear that too often because it's that hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I have people say, like, how'd you do it? You're so strong. You're so brave. I don't know. Something snapped in me, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just not. And I don't care what the consequences are. And so I almost feel like, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm not a therapist, but I feel like maybe people have to come to a breaking point where they're just like, I'm not taking this anymore. And maybe that's a point where they can finally pivot and say, I'm going to do something different. Am I wrong?
I think a lot of times it's like being a lobster in a slowly boiling pot of water versus like you just got dropped into a hot pot of water. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like for some people, it's like, okay, this is okay, this is okay, this is okay. But then it's like, okay, no, it's not okay. This is not okay anymore. And then there are some people that are just chronically feeling like something is wrong, but they're not really getting that moment that you're talking about. But they may come into therapy with something like depression or anxiety or relational issues, and they have no idea that it's actually tied to their faith community. So it's like you can
Mm.
kind of see, so like you have the wake up, like this is tied to this, that event. But some people, it's like oh, I'm in a hot boiling pot of water. And like you help them kind of navigate through that.
Okay. Interesting. So, before we recorded, you mentioned that you have some background in religion and all of that. I'd love to get into that, just to kind of hear your experience with church and if you're still in it, if you've come out of it, all that good stuff. So, if you want to
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about that.
sure. So I was not raised in the church, Italian, Catholic, so I had to be baptized Catholic. That was the rule.
Yeah.
But I didn't really go to church just based on different familial stuff. And then when I was a teenager, I met, a pastor's daughter, ironically, and we were friends, and I would go to church with her. And then when I was 18, I got really involved in a very evangelical, like they'd say, independent church, but
Hmm.
in Baptist background,
Oh,
exactly what
yeah.
I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay, it's all about Jesus. I'm like, this is curious to me. So I joined this church. But here's where I feel like I have a little bit of breathing room that other folks don't have because I wasn't born into it. I didn't have to unlearn anything.
Mm.
So it was like I went into this church and I just took in all this information and I just found it like so fascinating. And for some, like personal reasons around like love and relationships and queerness, I started digging into the Bible. Then I started digging into, I ended up like, okay, what about other faiths? So I got my religious studies degree. And then I went and got a master's in theology. Because I was just really like, what? I mean,
Ah,
from someone who was like not into this at all, right? Like,
yeah.
I just found it so fascinating because it dictates so much of who people are and our society as a whole, not practicing a faith.
That's very true. Yes.
So I wanted to be a professor. I knew I wanted to make changes, but I thought, okay, I'll be a professor of theology. But then I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. So I decided to continue schooling, and then I became a therapist specializing in queerness and Christianity. But the more I started working with people, I'm like, wait a minute, it's not just queer people that have trauma from religion. It's a lot of people from a lot of different
Yeah.
backgrounds and experiences and orientation, like just in mass, right?
Yes.
So I started doing more work around that. And here I am today, really focusing on that and having made this model that's based on therapeutic modalities that already exist, but building it into this model that's specific to religious trauma. So having the theology degree, the religious studies, the experience in the church, and then as a therapist, I just put it all together and here we are today.
Wow. That's fascinating. So, when you were in the church, did you experience anything crazy that would cause you any religious trauma or?
Sure. Yeah, but I didn't know that it was.
Yeah,
You know what I
sure.
mean? So that's also the other piece. I'm like, oh, I have religious trauma too. Holy heck.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So the trauma that I experienced was around my sexual orientation. I was out as a queer person in the church. I came in as a queer person. I left as a queer person. I am a queer person.
So, it wasn't a secret. It wasn't like people
Um,
didn't know and then you came out,
no, they
right?
all knew. And they figured that It was during the hate the sin, not the sinner phase of fundamentalist Christianity.
Sure.
So no one ever necessarily treated me any particular way that was negative. Like I had friends in the church, but we would talk about this. And were they definitely trying to convince me that was a sin and that I was wrong? Yes. But I was like, okay, I really want to understand why they think this. So I went to ex-gay ministry.
Okay.
I went on a missions trip, which where I wasn't actually allowed to tell the people on the missions trip that I was gay, but the leaders of the missions trip, the founding corporation, they did know. I had a whole conversation with them about it before they let me go on the missions trip. And then they said, okay, you can go, just don't tell the other missionaries about your sexuality. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I mean, it was very strange. I went and I spoke at a huge Christian conference with missionaries around the world about a relationship with Jesus when I was like 20 or 21. And my
Wow.
girlfriend was in the audience, so it was like a very strange.
Wow, that's surreal.
Yeah.
So this organization, what exactly do they do? They don't do like conversion therapy, do they?
No. So it's a bunch of just, like independent fundamentalist churches. And
Yeah.
there's a group that was, I'm sorry, this was a while back, but it was a group that worked with a multitude of independent churches to spread, the message of Jesus. So when I went on the missions trip, there were people from all over the US with a very
Okay.
fundamentalist belief system around Christianity. And
Okay.
it was really cool. I mean, I remember just different little things like, we were in the UK and we went through like the gay section of town and it's like, okay, everyone pray for the gay people. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to come back here tonight. And these people that were part of the mission trip, there are 2 or 3 people that wanted to come with me. I just said I was going out and I was like,
Yeah, you didn't say what you were gonna do. You
no.
just
And
were
they're
going
like,
out.
they
Yeah.
want to come with me. I was like, oh my gosh. So I still went and they came with me. And these were folks that they were in college still. We were all in college.
Mhm.
And in their college, they weren't even allowed to dance.
Yeah. So I
Yes.
get, yeah.
Yes, that level of strict. Next thing you know, they're in a gay club and they're dancing. And I said, hey, this is a gay club. I don't even think they questioned my sexuality, which is kind of interesting. But I remember saying to them, now I know some people might go, oh my gosh, Anne, you're corrupting them. But I said, tell me what you dancing here at this club, how does that impact your relationship with God in a negative way? Like, are you
Mhm.
harming someone? Are you being harmed? Like, what's happening? So I don't think like I don't believe that statement, like, live in the world, but don't be of the world. Like,
Oh gosh.
yeah, I knew that'd ring true for you.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah, that's just, we are in the world. We are part of this world. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean we have to be assholes. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
but you do though. You have to separate yourself. You have to, they would always say, you have to be a peculiar people because that's a verse in the Bible.
Mm.
Like what? We have to look like idiots, like with our outfits. We got to look like we're back in the 1800s. Like, what is I don't, and honestly, it's to me, it's like, how can you reach the average person when you want to look so different from everyone else and put yourself in a little bubble away from everybody else? What is that doing? You're isolating yourself from actual real people that you're supposedly trying to reach.
Totally. I completely understand that. I mean, when I went on this trip, I learned so much from others too, because like obviously I went to the gay club, but then we'd go to different places and I was just talking to a lot of people. And I remember we went to a university and there were several people from around the world and I sat at a table talking to them and I was just learning about their experiences and their religions and their cultural pieces. And it was one of the best conversations I've ever had. Never saw them again. Maybe it lasted 2 hours, but that's what I think about when I think about Jesus.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
Jesus didn't go hide off somewhere with 2 or 3 people and not engage people. Jesus was everything that I feel that these Christians, like, they're like cutting off part of Jesus,
Yes.
but they're cutting off a piece of who he actually was
Hmm.
with that
Yeah.
mentality.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, the Bible says he ate and drank with sinners. Like, And the people of the church, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they had a problem with it and they called him out. Like, why are you sitting here with these people? It's like, no, these are the people that he loved,
Yes.
and that's what I think the church really misses. I don't know if you experienced this in the church that you went to, but growing up, it was like they just wanted to talk about God of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Now, they'll say, well, it's the same God as the God of the New Testament. The issue is that the Old Testament was under the law. The New Testament is grace. So you have Christ dying for everyone's sin and showing his love and his mercy towards everybody and all people. Why are we focusing on the judgment and being struck by lightning, and if you do this, God's going to kill you? And that's not going to bring anyone into Christianity, at least not willingly. It will maybe by fear or
Yeah.
coercion of some sort, but it's not going to bring them in willingly. Why do they do that? I don't understand that. It's
I
just beyond me as far as that goes. Like, that always made me wonder, like, when I got out of church and I really started having a more organic relationship with God and finding out who he really was, I was like, this is way better than what I was taught. Like, it's like, no,
yes.
I don't go to church now. My husband and I do not go to church now for various reasons. There were things that happened and we just feel like we don't need to go to church to be
Sure.
Christians.
Sure.
But learning about God from that, like you said, where you're able to take yourself out of that environment where you're basically being told who God is, instead finding him who he is on your own and peeling back the layers and saying, what is truth and what isn't?
Yes. And it's interesting when you were saying that because and I studied so much when I did theology, it wasn't to just be able to quote Bible at you. I can't do that at all. But what I can do is speak of the culture and how all of this kind of came together to where we are today. And there was a period in around 1000 when Christianity was really starting to spread. But ironically, what was being understood was that the God of the Old Testament is not the same God in the New Testament, and that was actually a very more strong belief throughout
Mhm.
Europe. What it ended up happening is that was actually what the first Crusades were, is that the Catholics went around killing everybody that believed that, even
Mhm.
though it actually is really more theologically sound and logistically sound. The priests couldn't even argue with these people because they understood the Bible back and forth. So rather than debate, it was like, okay, we're just going to kill everybody. So they just
Right.
wiped out anyone that believed anything different from what the Catholic Church was saying about, because it just didn't make sense to them. Like, how could this God be this God? Like this, so they had this whole theology around it. It's called the Cathars.
Okay.
So if you ever want to check it out, or if the listeners do, it's very fascinating how you just eradicate the difference. So now we're here with a very specific way to understand the Bible and to understand the nature of God and Jesus. It's not even that, and I know that the fundamentalist folks would argue with this, but it's man's understanding and creation of God and Christianity. It's done through councils, through deciding what books go into the Bible, deciding how they're going to believe this thing versus this thing. So that's why I encourage people to do the work around it, because I think there's nothing more important than understanding how you feel about God, heaven, hell, the afterlife. Because if you live your life thinking, I'm going to hell, but you never invest time into looking at this, like that's a pretty big thing to be assuming. If I don't do this, this, and this while I'm alive,
Right.
I'm going to hell. Right? Like,
Yeah.
don't you want to get some clarity besides the opinion of one particular church? I don't know.
Right.
That's just me.
Yeah.
But I wasn't raised in it either. So I think that's a
Yeah.
sticking point.
I think it's important to also talk about deconstruction, because when you, especially if you were born into it or raised in it like I was, where that's all you knew. So it's ingrained in you. And even just seeing a person post a sermon, a pastor on social media can be triggering. and bring me back to that scared child in the pew. Like, oh my gosh, and we all have that inner child that we go through things in life and we all kind of go back to that, like, oh my gosh, I remember feeling that way at that age or that certain time in my life. And I don't know, it's weird. It's just when you think that you're doing well, something will come up and trigger you. And it's like David always says that healing is a journey. It's not a destination. Like you never make it. Like I'm cured. I'm great. You might feel good at certain points in your life and you're able to navigate and go through life just fine. And then something will just come out of nowhere. I know I've experienced that myself. What would you say to somebody who may be listening who is maybe out of church, who is still getting triggered by some of this stuff, maybe stuff that's going on in society or things that they may see people post on social media about a church that they used to go to? Is there any way that they can navigate that if they're getting triggered? Or would you just suggest like, hey, just block that person, or maybe stay off social media? What kind of steps could they do to navigate stuff like that?
I guess it would depend on the level of trigger that a person is experiencing. But let's say like you're on social media, you see that it hits you, you're triggered by it, and it lasts maybe a few hours. I would ask you not to block. That's a different story. But if every once in a while that's happening, that may not be a bad thing, because you can do somatic exercises to help decrease the impact of it. So you can work on,
Okay.
because what you're describing is a body response. Like cognitively, it's like, what you're good with where you are, and then your body goes, eh, right? So it's learning how to like be healing in your body more than it is going to be in your mind. So it may be very much like, okay, I saw this thing that triggered me. Okay, let me sit with myself for a minute. Let me close my eyes. Let me just try to release tension in my body. Let me breathe. Let me just remind myself that I'm safe. It's like it's doing work within your system. Now, if you're someone who sees something like that and you go into a panic attack, yes, you should block that person or do whatever you need to do to not see that. But what I would ask you to do would be the same. You would just have more extensive work around body exercises and body.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
we're talking about like having your surgery, like your body was having this response. But even with the surgery, I'm sure that there was an amount of internal bodily work that you had to do to feel safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that would be the same thing. Like, what can you do within your body to recognize that you are safe?
Okay, so we just talked about social media. Take, for instance, somebody who's left the church. And this actually happened to me. My dad was a pastor. I left the church years ago. He passed away 2 years ago. Service at the church I grew up at. So not only am I going to a funeral for my dad, I'm stepping back into the building where a lot of this abuse happened. That was a very, very difficult day in and of itself. But then you add the trauma part into it. I don't even know how, honestly, I got through it. There are people who are listening who may have similar experience or may have to soon deal with a similar experience where maybe they're invited to a wedding of a friend that still goes to the church they used to go to, or again, a funeral, or their mom is begging them to come to a Christmas service with them or an Easter service, and they have to step foot back in the building. Or even if it wasn't even the church they went to, just a church in general will trigger them and set them off. What steps can people take to get through those kinds of moments?
So the first thing that I would say is I would like you to weigh out whether or not this is something that you feel like you have to do. That would be my first line of questioning. For you, your father's funeral, it's like, okay, I'm going to feel worse if I don't go to my father's funeral.
Right.
So first you just kind of do that process of like, both of these things are hard. Which thing is going to be harder in a sense?
Right.
So if you decide to make that move and go into the space, ideally, we all should have some kind of body practice that we do for ourselves just to regulate our nervous systems anyway. But I would say that start those practices. If you're not doing, start them, because it's not so much that this particular event is a thing, it's this whole umbrella can be triggering. So I'm going to teach my nervous system to respond differently. So that would be first move. Then I would pull a support system. What is there a person that you feel safe with that can go with you to this as well? Anything that feels safe to you. It could be, I mean, it could be something as simple as like a trinket that you carry with you that makes you feel safe in some way, connected to something different, right? It's definitely an individualized thing, but we're always looking at like body safety, and then we're looking at support and safety, and recognizing like this may be very taxing for my nervous system to go through this experience. So I'm going to have a clear boundary. I will do this, mom, whomever. I'll go with you to church service, but afterwards, I'm meeting my friends at 7 p.m. And you set that up ahead of time. So you're not sitting there stressing about having to tell your mom that you're not going to hang out after church. So you put the safeties in place for yourself and the support for yourself ahead of time.
I love that. I also like the idea. Like I was thinking to myself when you said that, maybe have like your friends set up to meet you at 7 o'clock afterwards and be like, okay, I'm getting drinks afterwards. It's all good. Like something to look forward to, something that's like, I'm going to meet with my friends. It's going to be fun. And I'm going to do this for a little short period. And then we're going to go celebrate and do something fun.
Yes.
I love that. Just kind of giving yourself a little bit of a motivation. Like I just need to get through this and then I'm going to have fun.
Yes. And because we can decrease our response to our triggers, we can also increase the duration of how long it is before we get triggered, right? So it's like today, a scripture on social media may trigger you, but in 6 months, it may not, because you've learned how to regulate your system a little bit more. You learn how to feel safe a little bit more. So it's not impending doom that whenever you see this, you're going to get triggered. But like you were saying earlier, the healing journey is you maybe put in another situation around this that could trigger you. So it's just learning like, I got this. These are the things I need to do to got this.
Yes. And, I think it's important for people to note that it is a process. It's not an overnight, like, boom, I'm going to be better if I just do these breathing techniques and then it'll be all fine. Like it's going to take practice. Like you said, you need to be practicing this now. You need to be doing these things now. If you have an event coming up that's going to trigger you, do the work. Like start now, don't wait. It just like anything else, you eat on the daily basis, you take showers weekly, you might hopefully exercise on the daily. Do the mental work too, because it's just as important as everything else.
It is. And, and really it's okay. I'm going to give a personal example of something. And this is how I knew that I had religious trauma, because I didn't know before this. I was in the church. I left the church. I remained connected with some people in the church. Someone that I knew from the church passed away, and it was really important for me to go to the funeral. I was panicked beyond belief to go to this funeral. And the old pastor, who actually did say negative things about me, that I was going to be at this funeral. And I haven't seen him in like 20 years. So I ended up going to the wake, but I didn't go to the funeral because he was not going to be at the wake. So it was like, for me in that moment, like I was like, oh, wow, I'm just realizing what this is. It's really impacting me really hard, but I still want to show up in some capacity. So I'm going to have to do this. And if I can't go to the funeral, it's okay. This person's already gone. So
right.
I don't need to really be there for anybody else. But I still wanted to like pay my respects at the wake. So I had to recognize that because I hadn't worked through any of this at all, that I wasn't prepared for that. So I guess that's what I would say to the listeners. Like, if any of this is ringing true to you, do the work. You can't suppress it. I mean, I was completely blindsided that I had religious trauma. I was, what is this? I was in this for a few years. I left and I'm good. Until tragedy that I realized how impacted I actually was.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I think that the listeners sometimes if you're listening and you just don't know, you're like, I don't have religious trauma. I mean, you may. And so you did mention like a questionnaire that people could find. Is that in the book?
It's not in the book, but I would be happy to send you the questionnaire.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And maybe we can just make it available on our social media
Sure.
sites. And that way people can take the quiz and see whether they have religious trauma or not.
And
Then,
it's specifically around Christianity. I do want to make that caveat. That's
oh,
why I
okay.
don't have it in the book, because the book is like for all religions, but this particular quiz is for Christianity.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, I'll work with David and we'll make that happen for sure.
Okay.
So, as we end our episode here, is there anything specifically that you think the listeners really need to know that we maybe haven't touched on?
I just want to say you're not broken if you're questioning. There's nothing wrong with you if you're triggered. Experiencing guilt and shame around these topics is very common. And there are supports for you out there, whether you choose to stay in faith or not stay in faith. And if you believe in God, you know that God is love.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
I love it. And where can people find you?
So they can find me at annerusso.org.
Okay.
Just, yeah, and hit me up. I love hearing from people. I love to know that this work is not in vain. I don't ever think it is, but I think about the people in my own life that have been harmed by religion, people I meet. I see it so much that it means everything to me if someone feels a little bit more together and a little bit happier, a little bit more joy as we proceed in this very challenging life at times.
Where can people find your book?
So it will be released in 2026. So if you go
Oh,
to
okay.
my website, there's a wait list for it. And when it comes out, I'll just send everyone an email that it's out on the wait list.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anne, for coming on here today and having this conversation with us. I really appreciate it. And I hope the listeners are able to check out your book and check out your website, take that quiz, and hopefully find out if they have some religious trauma and get some healing, get a therapist, all the things. So thank you so much, Anne. Wait. Before you stop listening, I just have one thing to say. This is the boring part, guys. It's the legal jargon. Just wanted to make a disclaimer that anything you hear in this episode is all alleged. As you know, everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Although we do believe victims and we support survivors and believe their stories, we do have to be careful with accusing people. Thank you so much for listening.